The first time Lillian Brooks stepped onto a private yacht, she wasn't there as a guest. She was there to scrub wine stains out of imported carpet before sunrise. The Whitehaven marina smelled like salt water and money, two things that never mixed for people like her. At 5:12 a.m., she checked the time on her cracked iPhone, calculating how many extra shifts she needed to cover her sister's overdue medical bill. The screen flickered before stabilizing, like her life, barely holding together. The yacht owner was supposed to be away, so when she heard footsteps behind her, she froze. "Most people don't notice the ocean at this hour," a calm male voice said. She turned slowly. Tall, early 40s, dark coat. No flashy logos, the kind of presence that didn't need attention to command it. "I notice it," she replied, forcing professionalism. "But I'm paid to clean around it." He studied her for a moment. Not her uniform, not her worn sneakers, her face, like he was reading something written there. "Do you like this job?" he asked. Lillian gave the only honest answer she ever allowed strangers. "I like paying bills." He nodded once, like that answer mattered. Later, she would learn his name was Nathaniel Cross, maritime consultant, occasional investor, and a man whose life sat quietly inside financial circles she had never been allowed to see. But in that moment, he was just another wealthy stranger standing between her and the exit ramp. Or so she thought, because as she packed her supplies, she accidentally knocked a leather document folder onto the floor. Papers slid out, shipping contracts, legal liability transfers, signatures waiting for witnesses. For her name was printed on one page. She had never seen it before. And suddenly, survival wasn't the only thing at risk anymore. Outside, the sunrise bled gold across the harbor. Inside, Lillian felt something colder than fear. She felt like someone had just moved her life onto a chessboard she never agreed to play on. Lillian didn't take the document. She stared at her printed name, like it belonged to another woman. Someone richer, someone reckless, someone who signed contracts without reading every line 3 times. The leather folder smelled faintly like expensive cologne and ocean salt. She carefully stacked the papers back together, but her hands trembled enough that one page slipped free again. Nathaniel crouched beside her, calm, unhurried. "That shouldn't be there," he said quietly. Not surprised, not angry, just certain. Lillian swallowed. "My name doesn't show up in places like this." His eyes flickered. Calculation, not judgment. "Sometimes systems move faster than people," he said. "And sometimes they use people who don't even know they've been moved." The words landed heavier than any threat. She finished packing her cleaning kit in silence. Every instinct told her to leave, clock out, and pretend none of this happened. But survival had taught her something else. Problems ignored grow teeth. When she stepped off the yacht, the marina was waking up. A delivery truck backed into the dock. Seagulls screamed overhead. The normal world continued, like nothing had shifted, but everything had. At the bus stop, she opened her second-hand MacBook and searched legal databases using public access Wi-Fi. Shipping liability transfers, proxy witnesses, Shell logistics partnerships. Her stomach dropped. Someone had prepared paperwork that could legally tie her to a multi-million-dollar cargo liability dispute. If something went wrong, she wouldn't just lose her job, she could lose everything. Across the harbor, Nathaniel watched from the upper deck, phone pressed to his ear. "Delay the Singapore transfer," he said quietly, "and find out who inserted Brooks into the witness chain." Pause. No. She doesn't know yet, and she can't be exposed publicly. Back at the bus stop, Lillian closed the laptop and stared at the gray morning sky. She thought about her sister's hospital bill. Rent due in 12 days. The fragile balance she had spent years building. For the first time in a long time, she felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, strategy. Because whoever put her name on that document assumed she would panic, disappear, or break. They didn't know Lillian Brooks survived things worse than paperwork, and if someone wanted to play games with her life, they were about to learn she played to finish. By Tuesday afternoon, Lillian stopped pretending this was an accident. People didn't just end up inside multi-million-dollar liability chains. Names were placed, chosen, positioned like insurance policies with heartbeats. She sat inside Whitehaven Public Library, second floor, back corner, the spot with the slowest foot traffic and the strongest Wi-Fi signal. Her MacBook hummed softly as legal records filled her screen. 3 shell companies, 2 dissolved shipping partnerships, 1 active cargo route scheduled to move through Singapore in 9 days. And buried in the witness authorization section, her name. No signature required, just presence verification, which meant if anything illegal happened with that shipment, she could be listed as a confirming observer. Her chest tightened. Across the room, a television mounted near the ceiling played muted financial news. Nathaniel Cross's photo flashed briefly, labeled as former executive heir stepping away from Cross Maritime Holdings after internal restructuring. Former. Not retired. Not removed. Just stepped away. She replayed every conversation they'd had, the way he spoke about systems, the way he never asked personal questions but somehow understood personal answers. He knew more than he admitted. Outside, rain started falling, thin at first, then steady, turning Whitehaven streets into reflective gray glass. Lillian packed her laptop and walked toward the marina anyway. Fear could wait. Information couldn't. Nathaniel was exactly where she expected him to be, standing alone near the secondary dock, watching cargo cranes move in slow mechanical rhythm. "You knew," she said, stopping 6 feet away. He didn't turn immediately. When he did, his expression wasn't defensive. He was tired. "I suspected," he said. "I confirmed this morning." Anger flared, sharp, fast, unfamiliar. "And you didn't tell me?" "I needed to know how deep it went before they realized you were looking." The rain darkened his coat, but he didn't move. "They're testing liability buffers," he continued. "If something disappears during transport, they need someone expendable tied to the paperwork." Expendable. The word landed colder than the rain. Lillian crossed her arms, ungrounding herself. "Why me?" He held her gaze, steady. "Because you're invisible to them. No political ties, no corporate history, no legal defense team. Silence stretched between them, filled only by waves hitting metal hulls. Finally, she spoke again, quieter now. "Then they picked the wrong invisible girl." Something shifted in his expression. Not relief. Respect. Thunder rolled across the harbor sky as Lillian realized something else. This wasn't about escaping anymore. This was about proving she was never disposable to begin with. By Thursday night, Lillian understood one thing clearly. Whoever placed her name inside that legal chain expected her to stay small, scared, and quiet. Instead, she accepted the invitation. The message had arrived that afternoon through a formal email she almost deleted, thinking it was spam. A private networking dinner. Whitehaven Harbor Investment Circle. Business casual. Guest verification required. Her name was already registered, which meant someone wanted her inside that room. She stood in her apartment staring at the only formal outfit she owned. A simple black dress she once wore to her father's memorial service. Not luxury, not designer, but clean, sharp, honest. She tied her hair back, applied minimal makeup, and checked the time on her aging iPhone. 8:02 p.m. Too late to doubt herself now. The event took place inside the harbor's private glass conference hall, overlooking rows of docked yachts, glowing under night lights. Conversations hummed low, and controlled, the sound of money discussing other people's futures. Lillian stepped inside and instantly felt it. The subtle shift in air when someone unexpected enters a powerful space. Waiters passed, carrying wine she couldn't pronounce. Men in tailored suits spoke in half-sentences and coded language. Women in structured silk dresses watched everything without appearing to watch anything. Then she saw him. Nathaniel stood near the far window, speaking quietly with an older man Lillian didn't recognize. When his eyes found hers, surprise flickered, followed quickly by something sharper. Concern. He crossed the room toward her. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "Someone clearly thinks I should," she replied. Before he could respond, a third voice joined them. "Miss Brooks, right?" She turned. Richard Halverson, corporate attorney. Silver hair, perfect posture, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "We're very pleased you could attend," he said smoothly. "Your cooperation will help resolve several upcoming misunderstandings." The words sounded polite. The meaning didn't. Lillian felt the room shift again, conversation slowing just slightly, like background noise adjusting around a central scene. She understood then. This wasn't a dinner invitation. This was a pressure test. Halverson lifted a champagne glass toward her. "To productive partnerships." Lillian didn't take a drink. Instead, she met his gaze steadily. "I don't partner with people who sign my name to documents without asking." For the first time, his smile tightened. Across the room, Nathaniel exhaled slowly. Because in that moment, everyone watching realized the same thing. Lillian Brooks wasn't here to play along. She was here to see who thought she was weak enough to break. And she was about to start remembering every face in the room. By the time Lillian left the glass conference hall, the night air felt colder than it should have for early summer. Not physically cold, strategically cold. She walked past rows of luxury cars without looking at reflections in their polished doors. She didn't need confirmation that she didn't belong in that world. Tonight had already made that clear. Not through insults, not through open hostility, but through something worse. Calculation. She reached the marina overlook and sat on a steel bench facing the dark water. Her hands were steady now, but her mind moved fast, replaying every word Richard Halverson had said, every glance exchanged between investors when they thought she wasn't looking. She wasn't just a random name on paperwork. She was a test case. If she stayed quiet, they would use her. If she panicked, they would replace her. If she fought back, they would study her. Footsteps approached. Slow, familiar. Nathaniel stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "I tried to keep you out of that room," he said. She nodded once. "I know." Silence stretched between them, filled with distant boat engines and halyard ropes tapping against metal masts. "You're not safe inside their system," he said finally. "I've never been safe," she replied. "I've just been unnoticed." That answer hit harder than anger would have. Nathaniel sat beside her, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped loosely. No pressure, no touching, just presence. "Halverson represents 3 of the shell companies tied to that cargo route," he said. "If something goes wrong, they'll create a legal narrative fast." "Meaning?" she asked. "Meaning they'll make it look like you verified documentation you never saw." The harbor wind picked up, pulling loose strands of hair across her face. She didn't move to fix them. "Then I need proof," she said quietly. Nathaniel turned slightly, studying her profile under the dim dock lights. "Proof is dangerous to collect," he said. "So is being disposable," she replied. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Nathaniel stood. "I can help you access internal shipment audit trails," he said. "But once you see them, you can't unknow it." Lillian stood too. I stopped being able to unknow things a long time ago. Thunder rolled far offshore, low and distant, like a warning still deciding whether to arrive. As they walked back toward the parking area, but Lillian realized something had shifted permanently. She wasn't just reacting anymore. She was preparing. And somewhere inside Whitehaven's quiet wealth networks, people who had never learned her name were about to learn something else instead. She wasn't invisible. She was watching back. The first time Lillian entered Nathaniel's private office, she noticed what wasn't there. No gold decorations. No oversized desk meant to intimidate visitors. No framed photos of awards or yachts. Just clean lines, dark wood shelving, and a single MacBook open on a glass table facing the harbor windows. The early morning light reflected off cargo cranes in the distance, turning steel into something almost beautiful. "Sit," Nathaniel said, pulling a second chair beside the table, not across from it. Side by side. Not interrogated. Not judged. Lillian sat slowly, placing her worn backpack at her feet. Her pulse stayed steady, but her senses sharpened. This wasn't a social visit. This was information warfare. Nathaniel typed, bypassing multiple encrypted logins. Shipping audit trails opened across the screen. Timestamps, cargo scans, transfer authorizations, digital witness chains. "There," he said quietly, pointing. Her name appeared again. But this time, there was more. Behind her listed verification roll sat 3 hidden authorization overrides, all linked to shell subsidiaries connected to Halverson's firm. "They built a legal echo," Nathaniel explained. "If investigators look quickly, it looks like you approved multiple checkpoints." Lillian leaned closer, scanning dates. "2 of these timestamps overlap," she said. Nathaniel looked at her, surprised. "You couldn't physically be in both places," she continued, "meaning someone duplicated my identity authorization." For the first time since she'd known him, Nathaniel smiled. Small, genuine. Exactly. But the smile faded quickly. "If we pull these records, they'll know someone accessed them," he said. Lillian sat back, thinking. Outside, a cargo horn sounded across the harbor, low and steady. "Then we don't pull them," she said. "We photograph them." Nathaniel studied her again, not like someone fragile, like someone precise. "That still creates risk," he said. "I already am risk," she replied. He handed her a secure tablet, internal camera locked to offline storage mode. Lillian documented each screen slowly, methodically, double-checking clarity before moving to the next file. Every image felt like insurance she'd never been allowed to have before. When she finished, she exhaled. Not relief. Preparation. Nathaniel closed the audit system and powered down the MacBook. "Once you have proof," he said quietly, "they stop seeing you as expendable." Lillian stood, sliding the tablet carefully into her backpack. "No," she said. "They start seeing me as dangerous." Outside, the harbor wind picked up, rattling window glass softly, like the world shifting 1 degree off its normal axis. And for the first time since her name appeared on that document, Lillian felt something close to control. Not safety, but leverage. And leverage, in their world, was power. The email arrived at 6:03 a.m. Lillian was halfway through her shift inventorying cleaning supplies at the marina maintenance office when her iPhone vibrated twice. Once for the message, once for the follow-up calendar alert automatically attached to it. Mandatory legal consultation. Liability. Clarification review. Location. Halverson and Pike corporate offices. Time. Today, 11:30 a.m. No greeting. No explanation. Just assumption of compliance. Lillian stared at the screen, pulse steady but heavy. They weren't waiting anymore. That meant one thing. Someone inside their network knew the audit files had been accessed, even if they couldn't prove who did it. Across the harbor, fog still clung low over the water, blurring yachts into ghost shapes. Whitehaven mornings always looked peaceful from a distance. Up close, everything ran on pressure and leverage. She finished inventory counts anyway. Routine grounded her. Numbers made sense. Fear didn't. By 9 a.m., she sat in a corner booth at a quiet harbor cafe. MacBook open but untouched. Instead, she watched reflections in the window. Who walked past? Who slowed down? Who looked twice? Nathaniel slid into the opposite seat without ordering coffee. "They accelerated," he said quietly. She turned the phone screen toward him. He exhaled once. "They want to lock your narrative before shipment day." "Meaning?" "They'll push you to sign something confirming you reviewed documents you never saw." Lillian closed the laptop slowly. "And if I refuse?" "They shift from cooperation pressure to reputation damage." She almost laughed, but it came out dry. Already lived through worse. Nathaniel leaned forward, voice lower now. "This won't be loud. For no threats, no yelling. Just financial isolation, background checks leaking online, employment history flagged for review irregularities. The kind of destruction you couldn't sue." Outside, a black town car idled across the street longer than normal traffic patterns justified. Lillian noticed. Of course she did. "They're watching already," she said. Nathaniel didn't turn to confirm. "Yes." Silence stretched between them. Not panic. Planning. Finally, Lillian stood, sliding her laptop into her bag. "I'll go," she said. Nathaniel looked up sharply. "You don't have to face them alone." "I'm not facing them," she replied. "I'm studying them." At the door, she paused. "If they think I'll sign something just to make pressure stop, they don't understand how survival works." Outside, the town car engine turned over, pulling slowly into traffic as she stepped onto the sidewalk. For the first time, Lillian understood something clearly. They weren't trying to scare her away. They were trying to make her predictable. And she had no intention of being easy to read. Halverson and Pike corporate offices sat on the highest floor overlooking Whitehaven Harbor, designed to remind visitors exactly who held power inside those walls. Lillian arrived 5 minutes early, not out of respect, out of strategy. The lobby smelled faintly of polished marble and expensive coffee. A receptionist in a perfectly tailored suit confirmed her name without smiling and handed her a visitor badge already printed before she walked in. Expected, prepared for, cataloged. She took the elevator alone. As the doors closed, her reflection stared back. Simple black blazer, a neutral expression, eyes that no longer searched for approval. Floor 27 chimed softly. Richard Halverson waited inside a glass conference room, seated at the far end of a long table. 2 junior associates sat beside him, laptops open, faces blank and professional. "Miss Brooks," he said warmly, "thank you for coming." Lillian sat across from him, placing her bag on the floor beside her chair, not on the table. No documents removed, no signals given. "I was told this was mandatory," she replied evenly. Halverson folded his hands. "Mandatory is such an aggressive word. Let's call it mutually beneficial clarification." One associate slid a tablet across the table. Lillian didn't touch it. "What is it?" she asked. "Standard confirmation," Halverson said. "I'm simply acknowledging you witnessed cargo documentation transfers during routine marina operations." "I don't work cargo documentation," she said. "Not directly," he agreed smoothly. "But presence verification is often enough." Silence filled the room, thick, deliberate. Halverson leaned slightly forward. "Miss Brooks, misunderstandings happen in logistics. Paperwork moves fast. We're offering you protection from potential legal complications." Protection. The word sounded generous. It wasn't. Lillian finally placed one hand on the table, but not on the tablet. "And if I don't sign?" she asked. One associate stopped typing. Halverson's smile stayed, but thinned slightly. Then investigations become less controlled. There it was. Not a threat. A forecast. Lillian stood slowly, chair legs sliding softly against the polished floor. "I don't sign documents I didn't create, review, or agree to," she said. Halverson didn't move. "Think carefully," he replied. "The world can become very small for people without institutional protection." Lillian picked up her bag. "I grew up in small worlds," she said quietly. "I learned how to breathe there." She walked out without looking back. Inside the conference room, Halverson finally turned to his associates. "Escalate phase 2, he said. Outside, Lillian stepped into the elevator, heart steady, mind clear. They wanted submission. Instead, they had just triggered something much harder to control. Someone who had nothing left to lose, and nothing left to sign away. By Monday morning, the consequences started arriving quietly. Not police, not lawsuits, not public accusations. Worse, a Lillian's Marina access badge failed at the security gate. The scanner flashed red. The guard, a man who'd joked with her about weather forecasts for 2 years, avoided eye contact as he tried again. "System update," he muttered. "Probably temporary." Lillian nodded like she believed him. She didn't. By noon, her direct supervisor called her into a back office and spoke in careful corporate language about liability reviews and temporary schedule suspensions. No accusations, no clear reason, just distance. At 2:15 p.m., her bank sent a fraud alert requesting identity verification on routine transactions. At 4:40 p.m., an email arrived from her landlord requesting updated employment verification due to financial risk policy adjustments. The world wasn't attacking her. It was closing around her. She sat inside a quiet Starbucks near the highway, untouched coffee cooling in front of her. Around her, people typed, laughed softly, lived normal Monday lives. Her iPhone screen lit up with another notification. Social media password reset attempts from unknown locations. They were mapping her, testing how much pressure it would take before she called Halverson and asked how to make it stop. Across the table, Nathaniel sat in silence, having arrived 20 minutes earlier without asking permission. He didn't offer solutions immediately. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just stayed. "They're isolating you financially and digitally," he said finally. "No visible fingerprints, just pressure." Lillian stared at the condensation sliding down her coffee cup. "They think survival makes people compliant," she said. "Well, they're usually right," Nathaniel replied quietly. She looked up then, eyes sharp, steady. "I didn't survive to be owned," she said. Outside, traffic moved in long streams of brake lights, evening settling over Whitehaven. Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. "If they escalate further, this stops being corporate pressure and starts becoming prosecutable harassment," he said. "Then we document everything," she replied. "Not emotional, not dramatic, strategic." Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She silenced it without checking. For the first time since Halverson's meeting, she felt something unexpected settle in her chest. Not panic, not fear. Clarity. Because systems like theirs only worked when people believed resistance was impossible. Lillian Brooks wasn't naive enough to think she could beat them easily. But she was strong enough to make it expensive. And sometimes, in worlds built on risk calculations, that was enough to make powerful people change targets, or make mistakes. By Wednesday evening, Lillian understood something important. Pressure worked best in silence, and silence was exactly what she was done giving them. She didn't go to the police. Not yet. Not without complete documentation. not without understanding how deep the network ran. Instead, she did something far more dangerous to people like Halverson. She started talking to the right kind of witnesses, not investors, not executives, workers. The marina night crew knew everything that moved after business hours. The loading teams tracked shipments better than software sometimes. The maintenance contractors saw vehicles no one officially logged. At 8:40 p.m., Lillian sat inside a late-night diner near the freight highway, a cheap spiral notebook open beside her coffee. Not digital, not traceable, just ink and memory. Across from her sat Marcus, dock forklift operator, 12 years working cargo routes, loyal to whoever treated him like a human being. "I heard your badge got flagged," Marcus said quietly. "Yeah," she replied. "System update." He didn't smile. "That's not how updates work," she nodded once. "I need to know if anyone's been running night documentation checks on Cargo Route 7A, she said. Marcus leaned back slowly. "That's Singapore outbound," he said. "Why?" "Because someone says I verified paperwork I never saw." Marcus swore under his breath. "That route's been weird for months," he said. "Extra trucks showing up off schedule. Oh, containers sealed twice." Lillian wrote everything down carefully. "Anyone else notice?" she asked. "Maintenance cameras picked up license plates that never entered the official system," Marcus said. Her pulse didn't spike. It focused. Across town, in a private office lit only by desk lamps, Richard Halverson reviewed digital monitoring reports. "Financial pressure response?" he asked. "Minimal," an associate replied. "No contact attempts from Brooks." Halverson frowned slightly. "And Cross?" "Still maintaining distance publicly." Halverson tapped his pen once against the desk. "She's not reacting like projected," he said. Back at the diner, Marcus slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "Shift log copies," he said. "Didn't come from me." Lillian folded it into her notebook. "Thank you," she said. When she stepped outside, the cool night air filled her lungs. Freight trucks thundered past on the highway, carrying cargo worth more than she'd make in 10 lifetimes. But tonight, she realized something Halverson's models never calculated. Systems only worked when workers stayed divided. And Lillian had spent her entire life learning how to survive by listening to people others ignored. If they wanted to isolate her, they'd forgotten she knew how to build networks that didn't show up on balance sheets. The first public hit came Friday morning. Lillian woke to 14 missed calls and a message from her sister that simply said, "Are you okay? Turn on the news." Her stomach tightened before she even reached for the remote. Local financial media ran the story low on the broadcast. Not headline material, not yet. Just enough to exist, just enough to be searchable. Taunt unnamed marina operations. Witness linked to pending cargo liability review. No name, but enough detail for anyone inside Whitehaven Logistics to know exactly who they meant. Lillian sat on the edge of her bed, TV light flickering across the small apartment walls. This was Phase 2, reputation smoke without direct accusation. Make her look suspicious without giving her something she could legally fight. Her iPhone buzzed again. Unknown number, voicemail this time. She didn't play it yet. Instead, she opened her MacBook and searched her own name. Nothing official. But 3 anonymous forum threads already speculated about internal staff negligence connected to marina verification failures. Fast. Too fast to be organic. Across town, inside Halverson and Pike, Richard Halverson watched the same media clip with mild irritation. "Time we said controlled leak," he told his associate. "Not early leak." The associate swallowed. "It may have come from the secondary investment partners, not us." Halverson's jaw tightened slightly. Uncontrolled variables irritated him more than resistance. Back in her apartment, Lillian finally played the voicemail. "Miss Brooks," a male voice said calmly. Sometimes public confusion can be avoided with simple cooperation. Call when you're ready to clarify documentation misunderstandings. Click. No threats, just implication. Her hand stayed steady as she deleted the message. Then her phone rang again. This time, Nathaniel. "Did you see it?" he asked. "Yes." Silence stretched across the line. "They moved earlier than I expected," he said quietly. "Good," she replied. Nathaniel paused. "Good?" "Yes," she said. "Because now they've made this public without naming me. That means they're still not sure how much I have." She stood and walked to the apartment window, looking down at the parking lot below. Fear wanted to live in moments like this, but strategy lived there too. "If they escalate publicly," she continued, "they risk discovery during investigation." Nathaniel exhaled slowly. "You're turning their timeline against them." "I'm surviving," she said. Outside, a news van drove past the building without slowing. For now, she was still invisible to the public. But the people who mattered already knew something had gone wrong. Their quiet pressure hadn't broken her. It had forced her into the open. And now, for the first time, they had something new to calculate. A variable they couldn't predict. By Sunday afternoon, the pressure shifted again. Quieter, sharper, more personal. Lillian noticed it first when her sister called, voice tight with forced calm. "Someone came by the clinic asking about your emergency contact status," her sister said. "They said it was insurance verification." Insurance verification didn't happen in person, not on weekends. Lillian stood in her small kitchen, fingers resting lightly on the counter, grounding herself in something solid. "Did they leave a name?" she asked. "No," her sister said. But they knew Dad's treatment history. That meant database access, not public records, internal pools. When the call ended, Lillian sat down slowly, staring at nothing for a full minute. They weren't just pressuring her anymore. They were mapping her life. Her phone buzzed, not a call this time, but an automated credit monitoring alert. New inquiry request, corporate background verification. She closed the notification without reacting outwardly. Then she opened her notebook and wrote 3 words. Family equals red line. Across town, Nathaniel paced inside his office, phone pressed hard against his ear. "Stop passive monitoring," he said quietly. "If Halverson's network touched medical records, they've crossed into prosecutable territory." Pause. "No, we don't move yet," he continued. "We wait for confirmation." Back in her apartment, Lillian opened her MacBook and began cross-referencing public data broker services. Some allowed opt-out requests, some didn't. She logged every one. If they wanted her data profile, they would have to work harder for it. At 6:10 p.m., someone knocked on her apartment door. 3 slow knocks. Not aggressive, not friendly, just deliberate. Lillian didn't open it immediately. She moved silently to the side of the door and checked the hallway mirror reflection first. Courier uniform. No package. Wrong. "Miss Brooks?" the man called. "Delivery confirmation required." She didn't answer. 30 seconds passed. Footsteps left. She waited another full minute before looking through the peephole. Empty hallway. Her pulse finally picked up. Not panic, just adrenaline. They were testing physical boundaries now. That meant escalation was accelerating. She locked the deadbolt, then sat at her table, staring at her notebook again. Fear would make her react. Anger would make her reckless. But clarity would make her dangerous. For the first time since her name appeared on that document, she allowed herself one honest thought. If they wanted to touch her life outside paperwork, they had just made this personal. And personal meant she would never stop pushing back. Not quietly, not carefully, but completely. By Tuesday morning, Lillian made a decision that shifted everything. She stopped reacting in private. and started existing in public, deliberately. At 9:05 a.m., she walked into Harbor Light Cafe, not as a worker, not as someone hiding in routine, but as a customer. She ordered black coffee, paid in cash, and chose a seat directly facing the marina windows. Visible, predictable, calm. Her iPhone rested face up on the table, notifications silenced, but recording timestamps of every incoming attempt to reach her. Her notebook sat beside it, closed, unremarkable, but holding weeks of handwritten observations. Outside, the cargo trucks moved along the dock access road, business continuing like nothing had shifted beneath it. Across town, inside Halverson and Pike, Richard Halverson reviewed monitoring updates with growing irritation. "She's increasing public exposure," an associate said. "Daily patterns now include high-traffic locations." Halverson tapped his pen once. "She's building witness presence." "Yes," he leaned back slowly. "She's smarter than projected." Back at the cafe, the door opened, and Nathaniel stepped inside, scanning once before walking directly toward her table. "You're making yourself easier to track," he said quietly as he sat down. "I'm making it harder to isolate me," she replied. He studied her face, not searching for fear anymore, measuring resolve. "They've reduced digital pressure," he said. "That means they're reassessing." "Good," she said. "Reassessment costs them time." The barista called out an order behind the counter. Normal sounds, normal lives. Lillian wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, grounding herself in warmth. "I filed a preliminary information request with the State Labor Compliance Board this morning," she said. Nathaniel blinked once. "That's public record." "Yes. And if they search it, they'll know I'm documenting employment interference patterns." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Nathaniel nodded slightly. "You're forcing them into legal visibility," he said. "I'm forcing them to choose," she replied. "Back off quietly, or risk official review." Outside, a news drone camera passed high over the harbor skyline, filming a tourism feature. Ordinary footage, unrelated. But Lillian watched it anyway, thinking about perspective. From high enough above, power structures looked small. From inside them, they felt suffocating. She took a slow breath, steadying herself. For weeks, they had tried to shrink her world. Financially, socially, digitally. Now she was expanding it in the only way systems like theirs couldn't easily control. Witnesses, records, visibility. Because pressure worked best in darkness. And Lillian Brooks was done living anywhere dark. By Thursday evening, the shift was no longer subtle. It was measurable. Lillian saw it in small things first. Fewer unknown login attempts. Fewer silent cars lingering outside her apartment building. Fewer anonymous emails using vague legal language designed to sound official without actually being traceable. Pressure wasn't gone, but it had paused, which meant they were calculating. She sat inside Whitehaven Public Library again. Same back corner, same steady Wi-Fi signal. Her MacBook opened to a secured cloud archive Nathaniel had helped her set up, using layered encryption and timed access windows. Every photographed audit screen, every shift log Marcus provided, every timestamp mismatch she documented personally. She organized everything into 3 categories: digital proof, witness pattern proof, timeline contradiction proof. Across town, Nathaniel reviewed parallel data on his own system, mapping connections between shell companies and legal firms. The network wasn't just Halverson. It was wider, slower, older, and that made it more dangerous. At 7:22 p.m., Lillian's phone buzzed once. Encrypted message channel. Shipment audit internally delayed. Unofficial. No public explanation. When she stared at the message, they were buying time, or losing it. Across the harbor, Inside a private boardroom lit by low, recessed lighting, Richard Halverson studied a printed report. "She has physical audit capture?" an associate asked quietly. "Possibly," Halverson replied. "Or she's convincing enough that someone believes she does." "Next step?" Halverson didn't answer immediately. "Containment," he said finally. "Not escalation." Back in the library, Lillian leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling tiles for a long moment. Containment meant they no longer saw her as disposable. They saw her as a risk factor. Nathaniel's message appeared seconds later. "You felt it too, didn't you?" she typed back. "Yes, they're slowing down." Pause, then his reply. "That means you've already changed the cost calculation." She closed the laptop slowly. Outside, the library windows reflected Whitehaven nightlights. Boats, restaurants, traffic. Normal life continuing above systems most people never saw. For weeks, she had been reacting, then documenting. Now, finally, she was influencing. Not by power, not by money, but by making herself too expensive to erase quietly. She packed her bag, standing slowly, feeling something new settle into her chest. Not victory, not safety, position. Because for the first time since her name appeared on that document, the people who built careers on controlling outcomes were no longer certain how this one would end. And uncertainty, in their world, was the beginning of loss. By Saturday morning, the silence felt different, not peaceful, not safe, measured. But Lillian noticed it in the way her phone stayed quiet for almost 6 straight hours. No unknown calls, no verification alerts, no strange login attempts from overseas servers. For the first time in weeks, her digital life looked normal, which meant something was coming. She sat at a small outdoor table near the harbor, a plain paper cup of coffee warming her hands, while cold ocean wind moved through the marina. Cargo cranes stood still for once, maintenance crews working slower weekend schedules. At 10:18 a.m., a black sedan pulled into a temporary loading zone nearby. Not unusual for Whitehaven, but the engine stayed running longer than necessary. Lillian didn't look directly. She counted reflections in nearby glass instead. Driver. Rear passenger. No visible security escort. Interesting. A few minutes later, her iPhone vibrated once. An unknown number. She let it ring. Then voicemail. She played it on speaker, volume low. "Miss Brooks," Richard Halverson's voice said calmly. "There may be an opportunity to resolve misunderstandings without continued disruption to your personal and professional life. If you're willing to discuss terms, we're willing to listen. No threats, no deadlines, negotiation language." She deleted the message immediately. Across the harbor, Nathaniel approached from the secondary dock walkway, hands in his coat pockets, posture relaxed, but alert. "They reached out?" he asked as he sat across from her. She nodded once. "Offer disguised as compromise," she said. Nathaniel studied her expression. They wouldn't do that unless containment costs were rising. "Good," she replied. The wind shifted, carrying salt air and diesel exhaust across the water. They think I'll want normal life back," she continued. "Job security, digital privacy, financial stability." Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. "Do you?" Lillian thought for a moment, then shook her head. "I want control," she said. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just honest. Nathaniel nodded slowly. "That changes how this ends," he said. Across the marina, the black sedan finally pulled away, merging into traffic like it had never been there. Lillian finished her coffee, setting the empty cup carefully into a trash bin beside the table. For weeks, they had tried pressure. Then isolation. Now, negotiation. Which meant something had shifted inside their calculations. They no longer believed they could break her. Now, they were trying to buy her. And that told Lillian something important. So for the first time since this started, they were afraid of what she might do next. By Monday afternoon, Lillian knew the negotiation wasn't really about peace. It was about control. She sat inside Nathaniel's office again, harbor light reflecting across the glass walls, while cargo ships moved slowly toward open water. The secure tablet sat on the table between them, still holding the offline photo archive of audit records and timestamp contradictions. Nathaniel watched her carefully, not pushing, not guiding, just waiting for her to decide how far she wanted to go. "If you meet them," he said quietly, "they'll offer protection first, then money, then silence." Lillian nodded. "And if I refuse?" "They'll prepare legal distancing strategies, not attacks, just removal." She leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling for a moment, while thinking through every possible path forward. "I'm meeting them," she said finally. Nathaniel's jaw tightened slightly. "You don't have to do that." "I know," she said. "But I need to see how far they're willing to bend." Tuesday evening, the meeting took place in a private dining room inside a harbor hotel restaurant. Not flashy, not public, just expensive enough to signal power without attracting attention. Richard Halverson sat alone at the table when she arrived. No associates, no documents visible. "Miss Brooks," he said, standing politely. She sat across from him without shaking hands. Wine glasses were already poured. She didn't touch hers. "I understand you've been under stress," Halverson began smoothly. "I understand you've been applying it," she replied. A faint smile touched his mouth. "Direct, deficient." He folded his hands on the table. "We're prepared to formally disconnect your name from any cargo documentation chains," he said. "In exchange for written confirmation, you never accessed restricted audit systems." There it was. Not a bribe, a rewrite. "And if I decline?" she asked. Halverson's eyes stayed steady. "Then this situation continues, unpredictably." Lillian let silence stretch. She thought about her sister, the clinic visit, the unknown knocks, the slow financial suffocation attempts. Then she spoke. "I'll sign nothing," she said. "But I'm willing to discuss terms that include formal review of documentation processes across your partner networks." Halverson blinked once, not expected. "You're counter-negotiating," he said. "I'm setting boundaries," she replied. Outside the restaurant windows, some harbor lights shimmered across black water. For the first time, Halverson leaned back slightly, reassessing, because this was no longer about containing a risk. Now it was about dealing with someone who understood leverage and who had just refused to sell hers. By Thursday morning, something subtle but undeniable shifted across Whitehaven's logistics network. Not publicly, internally. Lillian noticed it first through absence. 2 scheduled cargo verification requests tied to her name were suddenly reassigned. No explanation. No notice. Just quietly rerouted to internal corporate auditors. They were pulling her out of active documentation chains. Not out of kindness, out of caution. She sat at her apartment table, MacBook open, on reviewing public shipping registry updates, while cross-checking them with the photographed audit timestamps she still kept offline. The Singapore route had officially moved forward again, but now under 3 layers of new legal oversight. Someone higher up was nervous. Across town, inside Cross Maritime's private conference suite, Nathaniel stood near the window while his legal advisor spoke quietly behind him. "Halverson's firm is shifting risk away from external verification witnesses," the advisor said. "That's not standard, unless exposure probability increases." Nathaniel nodded once, eyes on the harbor cranes. "They think she might surface evidence," he said. "They don't know how much she has," the advisor replied. "Exactly." Back at her apartment, Lillian's phone buzzed once, not unknown this time. Marcus, on Route 7. The container's got secondary inspection orders. Never seen that before. Her pulse stayed steady. Secondary inspection meant internal doubt. She typed back, "Keep documenting. Stay normal." She closed her laptop and stood, stretching tension out of her shoulders. For weeks, she had been reacting to pressure waves. Now she was watching system cracks form. At 3:15 p.m., a new email arrived. Official letterhead, legal tone, carefully neutral language. Notice of documentation review committee formation. Independent logistics verification practices. She read it twice, then a third time. They were creating oversight structures, not admitting wrongdoing, but preparing distance. Across town, Halverson read the same notice with visible irritation. "They're protecting the corporation, not the network," an associate said carefully. Halverson didn't respond immediately. "She forced timing," he said finally. Back in her apartment, Lillian closed the email and walked to the window, watching afternoon sunlight move across parked cars below. For the first time since this started, she allowed herself to feel something dangerous. Not relief, momentum. Because powerful systems only changed when risk exceeded profit. And somewhere inside their quiet boardrooms, her name had just moved from manageable problem to unpredictable variable. And unpredictable variables forced people like Halverson to make mistakes. Mistakes created records. Records created consequences. And Lillian Brooks had spent her entire life learning how to survive consequences. Now, she was learning how to create them. By the following Monday, Lillian realized something that would have terrified her weeks ago. The pressure hadn't disappeared. It had redirected. Instead of tightening around her, it was shifting upward, into boardrooms, legal departments, and executive risk assessments she would never physically see, but could now feel through small operational changes. She sat across from Nathaniel inside a quiet waterfront conference room, normally used for investor briefings. Today, no investors, no presentations, just two people studying the consequences of choices already made. "They're restructuring verification authority," Nathaniel said, sliding a printed report across the table. Lillian read quickly. "Independent audit committees, new digital signature requirements, mandatory dual location timestamp validation." "They're fixing the exact loopholes they used," she said. Yes," Nathaniel replied, "which means they're preparing for potential external review." She set the paper down carefully. "Or they're preparing to bury past activity under new compliance layers," she said. Nathaniel didn't argue. Outside, cargo ships moved slowly through morning fog, horns sounding low and distant. "At this point," he said, "you have leverage most private citizens never get near. You could push this further." Lillian leaned back, thinking. Push meant investigations. Investigations meant exposure. Exposure meant permanent war with people who never forgot names. "Or," she said slowly, "I use leverage to lock permanent protection instead of public destruction." Nathaniel watched her closely. "You're thinking long-term survival." "I'm thinking long-term control," she said. Silence filled the room. Not disagreement. Respect. So at 2:30 p.m., her phone buzzed with a new encrypted message from an unknown corporate channel. Proposal available for legal review. Non-adversarial resolution. She showed Nathaniel. "They're offering formal separation," he said. "Possibly financial. Possibly legal protection agreements. Possibly silence agreements," she replied. "Yes." She stared out the window, watching sunlight break through fog across the harbor surface. For most of her life, survival meant accepting whatever choice caused the least damage. Now she had something new. Choice that caused damage to them. She stood slowly, gathering the printed report and placing it into her bag. "I'm not destroying them," she said. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow slightly. I'm making sure they never touch my life again, she finished. Outside, the fog finally lifted, revealing full harbor traffic moving normally again. For the first time since this started, Lillian understood the truth about power. It wasn't about winning. It was about deciding how the game ended. And for the first time, she was the one deciding. By Wednesday afternoon, the final proposal arrived. Not by email, not by courier. Hand-delivered, sealed, unmarked, professional. Lillian opened it at her apartment table, sunlight cutting across the pages like something surgical and precise. The document was exactly what she expected, and nothing like what it would have been 2 months ago. Full legal separation from all cargo verification records. Formal confirmation her name had been inserted through procedural misalignment. Financial compensation structured as compliance settlement, not admission of wrongdoing. A permanent data privacy protections across partner networks. Silence clauses. Of course, she read every line twice, then once more, slower. Across town, Nathaniel sat in his office, waiting. He didn't call, didn't text. He understood some decisions had to be made without influence. At 4:12 p.m., Lillian arrived at the Neutral Legal Conference Center downtown. Not Halverson's office, not Cross Maritime, third-party territory. Richard Halverson waited at the table, alone again. "You've reviewed it," he said calmly. "Yes," he folded his hands. "It resolves exposure risk for everyone involved." "Not everyone," she said. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain." Lillian slid a single additional page across the table. Her amendment. Mandatory internal audit review with external observer access rights. A formal documentation purge verification monitored by independent compliance. Written non-retaliation clause extending to immediate family. Halverson read silently. The room felt very still. "You're negotiating from a position most people wouldn't recognize," he said finally. "I learned fast," she replied. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "We can accept this," he said. Not generous, not friendly. Professional surrender without saying the word. They signed copies in silence. No handshake, no closing speech. Just the sound of legal paper sliding across polished wood. Outside, Lillian stepped into late afternoon light, breathing slowly, steady, feeling something she hadn't felt since before this started. Not victory. Release. Her phone buzzed once. Nathaniel. "Done?" She typed back. "Done." Across Whitehaven. On systems adjusted quietly. Records shifted. Names disappeared from chains they were never meant to be part of. For weeks, powerful people had tried to decide how her story would end. Today, Lillian Brooks wrote the last chapter herself. Not with revenge, not with destruction, with terms. And sometimes, in worlds built on control and silence, that was the most dangerous ending of all. 3 months later, Whitehaven looked exactly the same. Cargo cranes still moved at sunrise. Harbor water still reflected expensive hulls and cheap fishing boats in the same tide. Tourists still took photos of sunsets they would forget by winter. But Lillian's life no longer moved, according to anyone else's calculations. She walked along the marina in a tailored navy coat she bought herself. Not luxury brand, not status signaling, just well-made, unpaid in full, chosen without fear of overdraft alerts or sudden account flags. Her phone stayed quiet now, not because she was invisible, because she was legally untouchable. Behind the scenes, compliance audits had reshaped documentation systems across 3 logistics networks. No public scandal, no headlines, just permanent structural changes written in legal language most people would never read. And that was enough. Across the dock, Nathaniel leaned against a railing, watching boats shift against their moorings. "You could have gone public," he said as she approached. "I know," she replied. "You would have won." "Maybe," she said. But winning loudly wasn't the goal. He studied her face, searching for something that used to live there. Survival tension, constant readiness for the next hit. It wasn't there anymore. "What was the goal?" he asked. Lillian watched the horizon for a moment before answering. "Control over my own life," she said. Silence settled comfortably between them, not uncertain, not unfinished, just present. A cargo horn sounded in the distance, low and steady. "For what it's worth," Nathaniel said. "I'm glad you stayed." She smiled slightly. "For what it's worth, I stayed because I chose to, not because I needed to." He nodded, accepting the difference. They walked side by side along the dock, not touching, not rushing. Two people who had learned the same lesson from opposite worlds. Power wasn't money. Power wasn't status. Power was the ability to decide who got access to your life. As the sun lowered over Whitehaven Harbor, Lillian felt something settle fully into place. Not relief, not triumph. Peace. For years, survival meant enduring whatever came next. Now, survival meant building something steady enough that nothing unexpected could erase it. And if anyone ever tried again, they wouldn't find an invisible girl waiting to be used. They would find a woman who already knew how every version of that story ended, and who had finally written her own. As this story closes, maybe you're sitting here wondering why it stayed with you. And if you're still here right now, it probably means something in Lillian's journey touched a quiet place in your heart. The biggest lesson isn't about money, power, or even winning. It's about dignity, boundaries, and choosing who you become when life puts pressure on you. Real strength is often quiet. As the altruistic philosophy reminds us, for we rise by lifting others. And sometimes that includes lifting ourselves out of situations that diminish us. Another powerful idea is that healing often begins when we stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I grow into because of this?" Life will test you, but you are not disposable, replaceable, or invisible, even when systems make you feel that way. If this story meant something to you, if it reflected your struggles or your hope for something better, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It helps stories like this reach people who might need to hear them. And remember, you are allowed to choose peace, choose growth, and choose yourself.